All right, we are now recording and we're meeting with Kerry Inman, who has a wonderful gallery in Houston, Texas, and is sitting in British Columbia. We should all be with you.
Yeah, sorry.
You're on an island?
I'm on an island. I'm on Denman Island, population of about 1,000. It's rural, out of the way, and I'm very, very lucky to have a place here.
That's fabulous. Can we talk about art?
Yeah, please. Yeah, I actually got dressed up for you.
All right, wonderful. And so, well, one of the things we were talking about earlier was, well, let me ask you this. When you were a little kid, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Well, when I was a little kid, that's a very good question. It was a really long time ago, but I can tell you that I came from a really interesting family in that my mom is an artist, and my dad was an engineer. He's still alive, but he's in a home in Vermont. But so I kind of got two sides all the time, and I was good at school. But I also loved art. I drew. I got a lot of kudos or a lot of props for what I did. But yet, when it came time to go to college, my dad would not let me go to art school, even though that's what I wanted to do.
Come out. Was that something you wanted to do?
Yes.
Okay, good. That's what I wanted to know. Keep going. So what did you do instead? You did something practical.
I think, though, what's interesting is, and this is probably true for a lot of people going off to school from high school, is I don't really think that I knew what that actually entailed. And maybe we can get back to that. But, I was
sure that's true.
Good at drawing. I was good at drawing and was very encouraged. But it certainly was an eye-opener when I finally did go to college and started taking art classes and found out it wasn't all about being able to draw. So I didn't grow up in our family. If you wanted something on the wall, you painted it, framed it, and hung it. So we were not a family of collectors. A lot of gallerists come from that, so they kind of know what it's about. And I certainly didn't.
You think a lot of gallerists come from the experience of what? Having fine art around them?
Yeah, I do actually. I shouldn't say a lot, but some people I know, I mean, they kind of understand that you can buy art and you can own it and you can hang it on the wall, and there's different reasons and different motivations for that. That never even occurred to me until much later.
Okay, I don't know if I've ever thought about that. All right, so the first artist I loved was Leger.
Okay.
And I was 18 years old in Paris when I saw my first Leger.
Right.
But I'd loved him since the time I was maybe 8.
Yeah, very interesting. I think my world was a lot more insular, with my mom being a painter, but a realist painter.
Yeah.
And I can tell you that probably my first love, but this is going to be this might be in high school, Robert Motherwell.
Wow. Okay.
But it almost had more to do with the fact that we met him once, or something like that.
That's important, though. That's the same thing we're talking about, how relationships between artists and galleries frequently grows out of a personal contact.
Definitely.
So
You're absolutely
when you met Motherwell?
Well, it's a little silly, but so my dad was from a very poor family, but became successful in business, and we had the opportunity to move to a nice place, and we actually looked at this, I think it was a barn. It was a barn that was going to be a conversion. My mom was very creative in remodeling, and so I remember as a kid, I actually was probably in junior high by this time, my mother pointing to this cow stall and saying, "Kerry, this is going to be your bedroom." Well, okay, right, Mom, right. Well, it turns out that is the property that Robert Motherwell later bought and used as his studio. So it's a funny, but it's still something that did ring true. And when I finally had enough money to think about buying art, the very first thing I looked at was a print by Robert Motherwell.
So I wondered, did Motherwell, did that experience influence your aesthetic? Did you like Motherwell? Did you become more interested in abstraction or war in Spain or anything because of having Motherwell?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, absolutely. I think I didn't really study art history until college. And once I started college and started studying art history, that's when I got involved with I'm older, so I went to school in the mid 70s. So, Andy Warhol was making work at the time. So we were talking about Motherwell, was still making work then too. But we were talking about Rauschenberg and Johns and their predecessors. And so yeah, I got heavily involved in more conceptual work and was very interested. And at the same time, I was still making my own work. So making abstraction, yes. So.
Is your aesthetic, so your aesthetic is more expansive than that now?
Very.
Okay, we'll go back.
I have a real, they say with a lower C, a Catholic eye. I like a lot of different things, and it has to do not with just what it looks like, but the background.
Let's follow that thread. How do you choose with such Catholicism?
Well, since I've had the gallery now for 26 years, which means I started when I was 18.
We knew that.
Yeah. It's really interesting, but this is probably something that everyone's heard before, and that is that most of the time I get recommendations on work to look at by other artists that I'm either already working with or whom I respect greatly.
All right, we need to come back to the mainer thread, but let's go off on that tangent for a moment.
Okay.
Why?
I can give you an example because we just last month had a show by a wonderful artist named Kristen Musnug, who's a landscape painter, and who some people would say, oh, landscape painting, God, Kerry, it's not contemporary. Oh my God. This is the first artist that I approached when I decided I wanted to have a gallery 26 years ago. And I still would claim that her work fits in our group, in our group. It does at first glance appear more traditional because it's landscape. And, but the way that she approaches her subject matter is extraordinary. And I'm really proud that we're still working together after 25 years. But she introduced me, she said to me in 1991 or something, Kerry, you should look at the work of David Aylesworth. So David Aylesworth is an abstract painter. And at the time, it took me a while actually, but because Kristen had encouraged me and I already trusted Kristen, and I took the time to really look at this work, and I've been working with him now for 25 years. I think I've been always willing to look at things that I didn't quite understand and to try to learn from it. And it's really, what I do as a gallerist is I share what I've discovered or loved about a body of work or a single painting with the audience, which are whether they're someone who's actually going to buy or just a visitor off the street.
See yourself as an educator.
Absolutely.
Do you?
I also sell art, but
yeah. But do you think most gallerists see themselves as educators? I think no.
I think more and more.
The good ones do.
Yeah, I think more and more because and here's another thing. I like to think that when I'm working with a client that we're going on a ride together, and I'm not just going to look for the red painting that they're looking for. I'm going to challenge them to go a little further. I'm going to show them work. They go, what? And we start having a conversation. And, I'm not always successful, but I usually am actually. And I try to help people find their own voice in collecting, just in the same way as an artist is finding their own voice in their studio. So people come to the business or the joy or the hobby of collecting from so many different ways, but it's often, oh, I have enough money, I have a house, I want something on my walls. And that's one kind of collector.
Sure.
And I'm actually working with one of them right now, a woman, and we're spending time talking about what she cares about, and I'm trying to pull out from what she says she cares about artwork that might reflect that, rather than her going, well, I really love red, and it'll go with my couch. So we're working that way. It takes a little longer, but my thesis is that 5 years from now, she's still going to like the piece, and is going to hopefully come to me and say, oh my God, I've gotten so much more out of this piece.
Yeah.
And that, anyway, that's what we work towards at any rate.
What do you do with an artist who shifts gears aesthetically?
That's a really good question. I think that because I work with the person, not just the painting, if you will, I'm thinking about the whole creature, we go with it.
Are you asking about a collector? Because I'm asking about an artist. I'm talking about an artist. So let's think about, so when I'm interested in showing an artist or working with an artist, sure, I'm interested in a body of work. I see a body of work, I visit with them, but I also get to know them a little bit and what they're trying to do, what they want to do, which means, yeah, they might change. That's okay. It might not sell for 2 or 3 shows. So I think that's something we can talk a little bit about, and that is, the commitment and what does it mean when things don't sell, and that isn't a conversation. Question came up earlier. I don't know. Do you want to go with this? What do you think the gallery's responsibility is, and what do you expect from the artist?
That's a huge topic, but we could start small and work bigger. You want to start big?
No, I don't even know if I want to go there. We'll come back there if we need to. But I mean, basically, you expect professionalism.
I do. And I deliver professionalism on my side, and I expect professionalism from the artist.
And you're not a mom, and they're not a child, and you expect a professional relationship, and you're both participating in their career.
Absolutely.
And
I logged in. Sorry.
You expect them to listen, but you're not counting on them following.
Yeah, that's right. I think that one of the things, as a gallerist, my job is to represent the artist. And that, what does that mean? That means to represent their ideas to the best of my ability, to talk about those ideas as they're expressed in a particular piece of work, basically I think that's, if I can't speak about the work or have an experience with the work, I don't have it hanging in the gallery.
Yeah. I just did a studio visit last week with an artist whose work I've loved for a long time, who left the gallery in the last 2 or 3 weeks because the gallery was incapable of speaking as well as he wanted about his work. And then later that evening ran into the gallery, who had nothing but the most wonderful things to say about the artist. And I've never seen an artist do that. I thought it was fabulous.
Well, I have, and I think that there's a couple things. One of them is, I don't know how long that artist was with that gallery. If it was a very short relationship.
I think at least 2 one-person shows.
So, okay. So it's the artist's responsibility to make sure that the gallerist understands the work.
Yeah, that's fair too.
And granted, when I'm standing in front of the work, I'm me, Kerry Inman, Gallerist, I'm not the artist, right? So I'm going to speak about it a little bit differently than the artist would if they're there. But the fundamental points that are important to the artist should be brought up.
Yes.
So,
So how many artists do you represent?
you should look at the website.
I have.
Okay, so it's a long list, and one of the things that you'll notice if you look at the website of Lower East,
website?
if you look at the website of Lower East Side Gallery, you'll find 12 artists, at average maybe, and we have 30, and that is in part there's a number of different ways that the artist's name either does or does not get on that top list. So that's another thing. But as a gallerist in Houston, Texas, who's been in business for 26 years, there are a number of artists who we sort of take care of, if you will, and their names are on that list, and they may or may not be as active. And until someone is really saying, I'm not active anymore, we're not going to take them off the list unless we have a conversation about it. And so that's why you'll find long-standing...
Let's change the question. How many artists do you represent actively?
About 15.
Is that enough?
Maybe 18.
Is that enough?
Yeah.
How many different stages? Are they in an array of stages in there?
Yes.
Or they're all in the same stage?
No, and again, this does a little bit comes from, so I've got a number of artists that I've worked with for a long time who you would say are mid-career artists.
Okay.
Some of them are mid-career in age only. Some of them, so if you talk about mid-career, that usually means you have a national reputation, or I'm just defining it. You have a national reputation, you've had museum shows out of your home state, so some of the artists that I represent, if I close the gallery, would not quickly get other galleries.
Right.
That's just the way it is. Some of them would, so I've got several artists who have national reputations, and a couple of artists who we've taken on fairly recently, which is exciting.
When you take on an artist, you clearly assume it's a really significant long-term relationship.
Yes.
Is there a prerequisite? Does somebody have a show before you take them on, or you take them on and then they have a show? Or sometimes either way.
Okay. So this is an interesting problem. This is an interesting question about the term representation. Okay. So if the art is in the gallery, the paintings or sculpture in the gallery, they're in a show, I'm in effect representing that work.
Okay.
I haven't made a long-term commitment, but right then in that show, we're representing that work.
Okay, that's not what I'm talking about.
No, I know, but I think that some people don't.
No, I appreciate that.
So we're, in general, we would say we're interested in doing a show with you, and we're interested in beginning a conversation. And that will be a show, whether I have two galleries or two gallery spaces, whether it's a small room show or a main room show is what we call them, doesn't matter.
Do things like another New York artist, another female, another 32-year-old, another $15,000 work of art, are these considerations or not at all?
You know what? They probably should be more consideration than I have made them. I have an awful lot of $20,000 paintings because of just where the artists are in their careers. It's not the front, but okay, there are certainly a couple things. Another New York artist, yeah. I'd rather, there's so many issues of shipping and I overheard, I signed on a little early to listen, and some of the whole issues of shipping work back and forth, it's gonna kill me. So the closer the artist is, the better. But, we do shows we really believe in, but the really heavy duty the really expensive shows to put on, I only can do a couple of those a year, and I have to plan. Sometimes I forget that.
So if an artist from Columbus, Ohio says, "Hey, Kerry, I come to Texas every couple of times a year to see my mom, and I'm always driving my truck, and shipping's not a hassle." Are you more prone to want to look at their work?
No, only if I mean, I would look at it because we look. If someone asks, "Will you look?" I'll look. I'll look at their websites, but unless I absolutely love it, there's just no way. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So that doesn't make me want to. That doesn't make me want to work with them. But let's say if we know a show is going to be less expensive, maybe we could do a small ad or something like that.
What are you thinking about art fairs?
Well, we, as Inman Gallery, we've done art fairs since 1999, when we really realized that they were essential, especially because we're not in New York, and we wanted to expand. Like, we were ambitious for our artists, and we wanted to help them have a larger audience. I will say that in 2016, because 2015 was so difficult at the art fairs, I had to call up the 2 art fairs we did last year that I loved and was very proud of and proud to be in. I had to tell them we weren't applying. I last year lost $75,000 in 3 art fairs, and I could not afford to do that. And I decided it was more important for the artists I represent to stay in business, even if we weren't doing art fairs for a year or 2, than to keep doing the art fairs and to go out of business. So having said that, we just made an application to the ADAA fair in New York with a new project of ours that I'm very excited about, that we'll find out on Tuesday, I think, if we get in.
When's that fair?
It's March of 2017.
Spring one, okay, right. Wow, and the deadline's 9 months in advance-ish?
Yeah, and you have to send a check for $5,000, by the way.
All right, fabulous. Do you feel like the gallery has changed direction over time?
No, I really don't. I think that has it changed direction? Can you be more, like, what do you think? Where's that coming from?
I don't know. I mean, when I had a gallery, I showed abstraction, and I got tired of showing what I could sell. I challenged myself more. I started showing things that plugged in, and I lost my audience.
Okay.
A lot of digital media, so.
Right, I gotcha. You know, I think the gallery hasn't changed direction. But I do sometimes sit down and say, you know, I'm interested, let's say, I think in 2005, my director at the time and I organized a show, I've forgotten the name of it, but it was a survey of figurative work that we had done a bunch of traveling. We weren't seeing any figurative work in Houston, but we'd seen a lot of new and very interesting figurative work around the country and in Europe. And so we did a show. And it was kind of like maybe taking a pulse, taking a look, sharing what we'd seen. So we do that kind of stuff a lot, actually. And that actually helped ignite my own interest in some of that work.
Okay. Do you feel like you're an advocate for female artists?
Yes, I do. I do feel like I'm an advocate for female artists, and
how does that manifest itself?
Well, that's a good question. We should count how many female artists are on the list. The new project that I was talking about just a minute ago is the estate of an under-recognized Texas modernist named Dorothy Antoinette Lassalle, a woman who got a little bit of attention in her lifetime, but not much. And I have been working for the past 5 years to try to get the estate, and I just recently got it, which is very exciting. It's our first opportunity. And although I wish she was still alive so we could be ambitious with her, I'm very excited about telling her story and bringing her work to a larger audience. So one of the things that when you emailed me and said, you know, we're going to be talking about the female voice, I thought a little bit, and there's a lot of things in the news right now as well, thinking about how women are perceived and treated, and you'd think, oh my God, it's 2016, there shouldn't be any difference. There still is, and I thought you would appreciate this story. So in 1985, I was working in the corporate world, and I had a woman boss, and she said to me, Kerry, I can make you a star. And she said, all you have to do is cut your hair, wear a skirt, and lipstick. And I went, what? I didn't say that. I didn't say that. I didn't say what. I went, well, I was kind of a hippie at the time. I said, well, I am not going to cut my hair. I don't own a skirt, and I'm not going to wear lipstick. So needless to say, she wasn't very happy with me. But the moral of that story was that she was trying to place me within the expectations of the corporate world, the men's corporate world. And as a woman, she wasn't supporting my independence. She was trying to follow and to fit us in.
Right.
Now that was a long time ago, but I thought of it today when you're thinking about the female voice. And I probably, I don't know how many people on this webinar have watched the television program Mad Men, but I never had. And so my husband and I recently joined the 21st century and got DVR, and we got all this cool stuff. And we said, oh, we want to watch Mad Men. It's supposed to be great. So we started watching Mad Men, and I was horrified. I hated it. And I thought, is this really true? And of course, this is about the early 60s. I was alive then. I was little. So I found it so offensive. I couldn't believe it. So those are two asides. But it has to be said that I think, as in lots of different career paths, it's still more difficult for women than it is for men. And my mom can't hear this, so it's okay. But my mom is actually a very, very good painter. But she is kind of in that world of painting when you're that I don't even know, Paul, you're going to know the name of it. It's, let's say she doesn't have a gallery in New York. She doesn't have a gallery. She shows some work at some galleries, but it's much more of a, we
don't want to say Sunday.
We don't want to say Sunday because she's really good. Okay. But it's this, I don't know. But there's this world that is mostly women and that are making nice paintings. And that's this world over here.
Okay.
And it's not the world that I live in. And it's sometimes a little, in the past, it has been a little uncomfortable. My mom now, after 26 years, knows I'm not going to show her work at Inman Gallery. But, I do encourage her and help her. I go, and she has open studios, and I go and hang it for her, and we do the sale bin for $50, and, we do it. But anyway, I think an issue that I'm dealing with right now that I'm learning from and about, and that is artists who are moms.
Yeah.
And
I think that's fascinating.
I am really learning a lot. And I think one of the things, I have to go back to some of my sort of the rules that I think are important, and that is clear communication. And I think, though, what I've found is that the artists that I work with, some of them anyway, haven't had realistic expectations of how much time being a mom is going to take, and how that might actually not derail, but unrail, if you will, for a couple of years, a strong kind of ambitious gallery and museum career. And
yeah, it's interesting. I mean, because I think there's a bunch of ways to go about that. On one hand, moms who've dropped out and come back, I find the mom content relevant and not
yes,
like it should just be sidetracked.
no, I totally agree with you.
Two is, Danielle Tegeter
Yes.
is a mom and has an artist husband who is not very stick in one place-ish. And she has published some things, and shared. Somehow I think it can be done.
Oh, there's no question it can be done. And I just think that,
I don't know that it has to be done. It can be done.
yeah, no, and I think this is where let's see, I'm trying to, at least 3 of the women I represent are moms. And the upshot has been a slight delay in, let's say, the studio practice. And I think that was something that I just had to get used to, because there's no question that the content that comes after being a mom is very relevant.
Well, totally, because I mean, an artist has to have life experiences to draw on to make art, and if you're 22 years old, you probably don't have too many.
That's exactly right.
You don't have as many as a 23-year-old, and you don't have as many as a 45-year-old.
Right, or an 85-year-old. I just took on an 85-year-old. That's good. That's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, do you guys out there have questions? We should open this up for questions and raise hands and stuff, or interrupt in a moment. How many artists do you take on? How often? Sounds like you've taken on 2 or 3 in the last 12 months.
Let's see. In the past 2.5 years, Jamal Cyrus, Lena Rejos Moreno, Gene Owens, who's not on the website yet, and then The Estate. I think those are the 4 new ones in the past 2.5, 3 years.
Is it First Estate?
It's the First Estate, yes.
That'll be cool. Estates are different.
It's very different, but I'll tell you what's already very interesting to me is it's already reading through her correspondence is already kind of informed. I feel like my experience of getting to know this woman who was frustrated by the New York art world and by her local Texas world, I feel like I'm going to be a better dealer for the living artists. So I'm really enjoying it.
It was pretty cute to hear what Carmen Herrera had to say about that upstart Ellsworth Kelly.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. I'm working with someone who's frustrated that they're not, in major museum shows and they're 42. And here was a woman who lived until she was 100.
Yeah, I noticed that.
She saw her first museum acquisition when she was 72. So
yeah.
Sometimes it takes a while.
That's awesome. All right. So I don't see anybody with questions.
I have a question.
Wait a minute. Who's that?
Carolyn.
I knew it was you.
Hi, Carolyn.
Go for it.
Okay, so I'm kind of analyzing what you had to say about women that have children and whether they can really be in the art world. I need more clarity because I have children. My mother had children, and we were all doing art. And I don't know. Actually, to be honest, I twice in my lifetime, I was so devastated when my femininity was commented on in a negative way that it made me even more feminine in a sense. I wanted to assert my being a woman.
My ovaries.
I think
one was when I was in university. And I had a teacher, we did this, it was a design course. I think it was my 2nd year. And I made this piece out of, Palmer, Liquitex Palmer medium had just been invented, the glue medium.
Mm-hmm.
Paper, it was kind of a thing, nobody really knew what to do with it. It was invented. And I made this really delicate mobile that was very, I would say, feminine. And I took it and I thought it looked terrific. I'd never seen anything like it. And my teacher said, well, that is just too feminine. What's too feminine?
Right.
And the other thing I remember that really offended me was when I was in New York. I'm on the West Coast. Went into a gallery, and the the director said, yeah, he says, we were talking about different kinds of art that he carried. He says, well, I would never carry a middle-aged woman's art. Never. And I thought to myself, how dare you? Anyway, so I just want a little bit more clarity on
Sure.
how you're defining this.
So I think that my comments were misunderstood, because being a mom is part of life, and I totally honor it. And I think my comments only were that when you're in a relationship, as a gallerist and an artist are, when the artist goes and has a child, sometimes that sort of interrupts the flow of things, is all I'm saying. And so what I'm saying is I'm working with a number of women artists who are moms, and that is teaching me a lot about that time management, to be honest with you. And also to kind of, it's the same thing, I'll say the same thing that I've learned over the years. When an artist moves studio, no matter what they say, oh yeah, no problem, I can totally have the work ready. I want to show, yes, I want the show in January. No way. It's not going to happen, because the studio is a place where the work is made, and when you move to a new studio, the work changes. And so I guess what I'm saying is it's just a matter, sometimes there's, on the gallerist side, you're making plans, right? And the artist wants a show, and they say they want a show, and you're like, okay, would you like September? Yeah, I want September. Absolutely. I'm like, okay, it's on the, and then June comes around and the work isn't ready, so all I'm saying is that my learning is that it's just like moving studio. Things take longer. So it has nothing to do with not wanting it at all. It's just a matter of, I think when somebody takes on a new project, that's what that is, right? It's a new project. Then you have to acknowledge how much time it takes and kind of adjust your other things. And being honest with other people's, with the relationships that you have outside the family. And the gallerist is a relationship.
I think, Carolyn, you want to say more?
No, I just say, I understand. Yeah. Good.
Okay.
I think the role of women in the arts has changed. I can remember when, this is painful, I showed somebody a Sam Gilliam painting for $30,000, and
Right.
art consultant said, no painting by a black artist will ever be worth over $25,000.
Well, that person was a little wrong, wasn't?
Yeah, a little bit. But so, and I don't know that women function like they did in Mad Men. And I think things, I think things are changing, and I think they seem to change in spurts, and I think they're changing again. I think that more issues that involve honesty and genuineness pertaining to women are relevant in exhibitions. Kerry, my sense is that most curators are female, or pretty close. What's your sense?
Well, I don't know most, but certainly if I had my database right here and I clicked on curator, there would be more women than men. And but they are not necessarily championing women.
Go on.
Well,
why not? Time out. Don't you think, ooh, that's weird. Don't you think humans by default migrate towards what they're interested in?
There you go.
As they're interested in men?
Yes.
Oh. I see. Is that why we're having this conversation?
You're like, yeah.
Most galleries are not women.
I disagree.
You think most galleries are?
A lot of gallerists are women.
Most artists in most galleries, men or women, are men. Most artists don't, male or female operators, dealers.
Okay, Paul, I'm sorry, I don't
I think
understand.
most artists in most galleries are male.
So you're saying that, well, I mean, even if the dealer is a woman, you're saying that most of the people that they represent are men.
Yep.
Yes, I agree with that. And it's definitely something that at Inman Gallery we're paying attention to.
Good.
So if you would, I mean, this is just completely honest, if two artists walked in who were making the same work,
Yes.
and one was a woman and one was a man, I would take the woman.
Yep.
And that's just the way it is right now.
Yeah, me too.
And it's a little bit like as it is for in a lot of fields. You know, I feel a little bad for the men, but that's just, you know, people go, whoa, what do I have to do? You know, at this point, I am interested in the woman's voice, and I'm focusing on it. Having said that, the last four artists we've taken on, 2 were men and 2 were women. So
It seems like a typically sufficiently high percentage of women.
I guess, yeah. I mean, I think one thing that's really interesting is how, and this is certainly not a unique thought. It certainly did not used to be commented on when a show had only men in. Now you do comment,
True.
but as a curator, you can be free of that comment if you would just sprinkle in a few women. That's still the case.
Here's a loaded question. Is there a sisterhood in the art world?
There's a good guy. There's a good guy group amongst dealers that doesn't include just women.
Yeah, I know.
But when you work at art fairs, you find out who the good guys are.
Yeah.
And then you want to work with them. So just as it's super important for artists to have their own network and to know who to trust, it's the same thing with dealers, right, Paul?
Oh, totally.
Yeah. I mean, you love that Jim Harris up in Seattle, and if he wants to show one of your artists, you say yes, yes, yes. So, for example.
Because it's already worked.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but then the corollary is where, you know, sometimes an artist is represented by you and someone else, and that someone else. Yeah.
It's not as it makes it a little awkward sometimes.
It can happen. Who's got questions? Why are you guys not asking?
Sorry, I'm so boring.
Oh. Yeah. What's the deal, peoples?
I have a question.
Yay for Carol, or is that Karen? I saw Carolyn gesticulating, so we're going to go to Karen first. Go ahead, Karen.
How important is it for, what if I have 4 distinct bodies of work that are related in my head but may not be as obvious without a lot of explanation? Is that off-putting to a gallerist, or what's your thoughts on that?
So it's not off-putting to me. It would be off-putting to somebody who's just looking at okay, here's a red painting, great, I'll hang it. It's not off-putting to me because I'm more interested in the ideas behind the work and how you're expressing them. So the part that will take a little bit more work is for you let's say we're having a show, then we would want to discuss, do we show all 4 of them? Do we show 2? What is it? Basically, you have to have a conversation about how you're presenting yourself in a show when you do have such diverse works. So, yeah.
We were talking about the difference between a dealer and a gallerist, and I think the answer follows that answer. You know, I mean, if they're interested solely in the sale, they're a gallery, and maybe that's not the ultimate kind of situation you'd like to have in a relationship. And if they're interested in what's best for you, they can handle, right? The vision, as opposed to just this individual body of work that is 17 different sized red paintings. Yeah. Cool.
I think I heard someone speaking when I logged in about And I think it's it's worth mentioning because it's a really common issue. It was somebody who said that they were afraid to talk to the gallery, and they were partly afraid to talk to the gallery for the same reason you were running away from your girlfriend in 8th grade. Yep. So they were afraid of hearing bad news. And I think that, oh gosh, it's important. It's kind of important to hear the bad news, because why not move on if the gallerist has become less interested in the work or doesn't understand it or whatever. But usually it's that the artist doesn't communicate because they're afraid to, and they shouldn't be afraid to. And even if the result is, oh, I don't have a gallery anymore, well, that's not the end of the world. I think there's so many things that could be cleared up by a phone call, or actually an email is nice, because sometimes calling the gallery in the middle of a busy day saying, where's my $10,000? But clear communication. And it's nothing wrong with asking, hey, I understand that you sold this work. When am I going to get paid? And that's a totally appropriate question. Or, gosh, I see we haven't, anyway, there's basically any question is appropriate. And it's just sometimes you don't do it at an opening, but.
Yeah, right.
It's like, don't be afraid. I think artists, for the most part, give the power to the gallery, but it should be a mutual thing. It should be a mutual thing.
Thank you. Good point. Carolyn, I'll get you in a moment. Steve, go ahead.
Yeah, I like your website. Lots of diverse artists. What's your thought process, and why do you choose not to publish prices on your website?
Boy, yeah, that's
There seems to be a kind of a mix between some galleries put prices, some do not. I mean,
I can only think of one that does, actually. Do you see more than that, Steve?
One of the videos.
Greg Kucera does it.
Greg Kucera, and I've seen one or two others, but yeah, it's mostly common not to. And I just wondered, why not?
So it's an interesting thing. Like, depends on what the website is fundamentally for. And we've been moving our website towards being an archive, as well as showing a selection of work, so that you understand, okay, this is what David Ellsworth does, this is what Jamal Cyrus does, this is what Dana Frankfurt does. It's not predominantly a selling venue. So the places that are that we belong to, like Artsy and First Dibs and ArtSpace, they publish prices. And so those are selling platforms. I think what we also, I mean, there's an argument to be said that, you see a piece on a collector sees a piece and they don't know if it's going to be 100,000, 10,000, 100,000, or a million. They should know that it's not going to be a million or 100,000 if they don't recognize the name. So, I think someone like Greg Kucera, who's a very good friend of mine, I think he's publishing prices to be very efficient, and he works with a lot of consultants, and it's really quick and easy for the consultant to know, I know this is 9,500, and I can pop it into my proposal without calling the gallery. I would rather have the consultant call the gallery. So the consultant pulls images off my website, and then they'll call up and say, hey, I just got this on the website. Can you send me more information about it? So then I have an opportunity to talk with them, and maybe I can say, I just got some other new things, whatever. So it encourages conversation.
What do you think about artists putting prices on their website? Do you want that information, or does it sort of like look too crass?
I might be old-fashioned, so since I'm almost as old as Paul.
Heaven forbid.
Sorry. But I just don't, unless you're selling from your website and it's a selling venue, so you can click and put the work in a cart, I don't think you need the price.
Cool.
Okay, thank you. That's useful.
Carolyn, go ahead.
So My question is, what is your favorite type of approach for an artist? Say you have an artist that just moved to your town in Texas. I'm sorry, I don't know where you're located. Houston. Say
Yes.
an artist mid-career is coming into Houston and they want to meet gallerists and they want to interview different galleries, and they don't want, or perhaps they don't have the time to come 3 or 4 times to see your shows. So they're coming into your gallery. What's the best way to approach your gallery for a possible show?
So first, it's sort of a little telling if you say that you don't have enough time to come to see 3 or 4 shows.
Well, it's not that, but you're not in town that long because you're moving and you're just getting established, right?
Right. So fair enough. There's a couple things. One of them is hopefully you have visited the gallery, you know the size of the space, you know that if you make 20-foot paintings that don't fit in my door, you'd be surprised at how many people don't do that. They've never visited the space. Hopefully you've looked at the website and you know kind of what we do. And I don't have any problem with somebody emailing me and saying, I'm moving to Houston. I've been represented by Paul-Klein before in the past. I show with so-and-so. I'm interested in showing in Houston. Here's the link to my website. And then come in and introduce yourself.
So really the best way is to go first with the email.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
There.
For me it is. And for me it is.
Yeah.
I don't think what Kerry's saying is out of the norm, atypical, unusual at all. This is what we're going to spend almost all of next week discussing. Thank you for the introduction, Kerry. Did somebody else have a question? C, go ahead.
Okay, let's see if I'm unmuted.
You are muted.
Great. Thank you for being here. I was wondering, I was looking at your website and I was so excited to see that you represent Dario Robledo.
Yes, Dario Robledo.
And Katrina Moorhead.
Yes.
And I think they're so interesting. And I wonder how much space there is on your roster for people that are doing conceptual work like that, installation.
I think that if we went down that's probably where my heart lies. Dario and I have worked together for 17 years. I'm his primary dealer, and he's an extraordinary human. And Katrina and I, we've been friends for 20 years, and I've represented her for over 10. So I think that I already said it, it's where my heart lies. I love the work. And I think that sometimes conceptual work can sell, and a lot of times it doesn't. And so when you look at a gallery as a business, you know that some things have to sell in order to support the other things. And so if I had a whole gallery of work that was installation difficult, then I would be way poorer than I am. We wouldn't still be living, truthfully. But I love that kind of work. Take a look at Michael Jones McKean. Take a look at Jamal Cyrus. Those two are also predominantly conceptual artists. They make objects. They make sculpture. They make objects that come from ideas. So
great. I'm so excited to hear that you're interested.
Anyway, that's what my primary interest is.
Oh, that's fantastic. Great. Because I know even as an artist that if you're less interested in selling and you're more interested in the ideas and the conversation that it promotes, then good to know.
You still ultimately, again, this is someone else was talking earlier about nonprofits. The truth is that sometimes work is more appropriate for a regional nonprofit space or a college, a university museum than it is for a gallery. And the thing is that I work with artists who do have difficult work, and we do show it. We just can't have every show be that. So
thank you.
And sometimes we sell it, by the way.
Good to know.
I think it's more evidence, of Kerry, the balance between business and passion. And
Yeah.
It isn't, I think the galleries that are solely about business sort of It's not too hard to sniff them out. And, the priority's arts and substance. It's not just the business aspect.
That's right. And to your point, that I think if you look at my website and look at the painters, many of them, like Sigrid Sandström, for example, the ideas come. They're painters, but the ideas are there as well. And so they're Gilad Efrat from Israel. They're strong conceptual grounding in their work. So
cool. Let's go with 2 more questions and wrap it up. Giacomo, go ahead.
Hi. Let me try that way. So I don't have any experience about gallery or galleries. I don't know. It's something kind of I want or I don't want. Just thinking about. But what happened? Let me see a kind of scenario. What happens when artists come and discuss with you I don't know if I want to sell him, but I have some idea. I want to have some kind of show, but probably maybe we can still have a contact, or still we can show my idea. Probably the selling is going to be in the future. What happens if I have some kind of idea, or artists have some kind of idea? It's not object, but something completely conceptual, or completely performative, or completely not object, I don't know, Tino Segal, for example, or something like that.
Right.
I don't know if it's clear, the questions.
Okay, I think what you're asking is if we look at someone like Tino Segal or someone else whose practice is mostly outside the white cube, I think that it's not necessarily the first place that they need to go, or the first relationship they need is a gallery. And whereas potentially further along, potentially at some point, but I think the relationship with a gallerist and having a gallery is good for some people and isn't necessarily needed, to be honest, with someone like Tino Segal. And I don't want to only just use him, but I definitely.
I think Giacomo's question is more about what if I'm like Tino Segal and I don't.
What if I'm like Tino Segal? Okay.
I don't have much of a track record, and here I am, Kerry.
Yeah, because I'm not a big name. I'm not a famous.
Right. I got you.
I have that kind of job because I like, and I think in my art, in a way.
So let's say you and I are talking, and the first thing I'm going to do is look at your resume and say, well, how many shows have you had in nonprofit spaces? Have you made proposals in nonprofit spaces in your area and been successful in having those shows?
No, I don't have.
So that's the first thing you want to do. So I'm not your first point of call. So you want to establish yourself. Let's say in my town, and you could look these guys up. In my town, there's a place called Diverse Works, a venerable nonprofit space that focuses on performance art and kind of the mix, actually, or the intersection of performance and visual arts. And so if you are interested in that, that's where you would go, and you'd make a proposal to them first. So it's not about selling, it's about showing your ideas, and that's what they're looking for. So you want to seek out places like that to get started, and you have to build that resume. Even if you're not a painter, you still have to build the resume.
What happens is has some kind of work until the process, the idea get an object.
Yes.
What happens in this case? More interesting?
I'm not quite sure I understand.
What happens in some kind of performative idea or conceptual idea, in the final, the idea get an object like a sculpture, like a painting, but because it's community painting happening in the performance, you get at the last moment one object to sell it because of the event. What happens about that? You more interesting?
That gets slightly more interesting, but it's still a question of having a track record.
Yeah.
And not making the entire leap of faith and being able to have some sense that this is going to work. You know, it doesn't rule it out. And if you have this object, it's possible that something can even be pre-sold.
Right.
And you could take a look at various kinds of role models. You mentioned Tino Segal. You can look at Tino Segal. You can look at Catalan. You can look at, you can even look at Christo. I mean, people who have done things differently than Saul Lewitt. People who have done things differently than other people have done them before. You know, basically all you need is one person to go, Giacomo, you know, you're not crazy.
Right.
Here's $250,000. Let's go to town.
Right. So here's the thing.
Person.
So here's the thing is it doesn't actually matter if you're making performance, conceptual art, something that ends up being a sculpture. For someone like myself, I need to see a track record. So I want to see that you've had successful shows at various nonprofit organizations with curators, and that, you know, it's not it anyway. There's a track record.
Besides, you know, I was thinking also the art guys in Houston. They probably started off getting public attention and then doing, and then got some I don't know if they ever had a gallery. Yeah,
they did. Barry Whistler in Dallas.
Okay, so the art guys are a pair of artists to do some fascinating projects in Texas.
Right.
All right.
Thanks.
Well, we had a last question from Heather, but her hand went down. Heather, are you here? Do you want to ask a question? Go ahead. You can say no.
Well, it was, I think it was, hi, Kerry, thanks for being here. I think it was partly answered by the last answer, and I feel kind of happy that I showed in all those nonprofits.
Absolutely. I heard you speaking about that, and I think if it's okay to just comment on that, I think what Paul said, I think, was a real truism, and that is that perhaps you didn't take advantage of those situations. I mean, having your work hanging at a local nonprofit is the best time to ask a gallerist to go and look at them, because they're already hanging. And so you want to parlay those into relationships. But it's definitely the right thing. You are building your resume in a new place. So it's totally the right thing.
Yeah. I think I've learned a little now that, so Christo, you know, he makes his sketches worth having.
Yes.
So my little scraps and doodles and things that I do along the way, I haven't been paying enough attention to as records in themselves. They've just been along the way, as if, you know, they don't matter because I've been rushing towards what I've been interested in instead of saving and making feeling that there's
I don't know that there's a lot of benefit to being a pack rat.
The only thing, Paul, is that if, and Heather, I'm sorry I don't know your work, but if the work is dominantly large scale, ephemeral, it's not easy to sell. And a lot of times, like Christo is a good example. I mean, Christo's drawings and prints are what funded, as well as grants. But I think there's a number of artists who fund their practice with two-dimensional work.
True.
Right.
All right. Why don't we wrap this up? This has been really good. Kerry, thank you a ton for
You're welcome.
Coming in from the cold.
Yeah, well, it's about 70 degrees.
It's really beautiful, and it's still daylight. And I know it was a euphemism or dysphemism or something.
Yeah. No, I really appreciated it. Thanks for asking me, Paul.
You've been great. Let me unmute everybody, and everybody say thank you, Kerry.
Thank you.
Hi from us.
All right. See you all next week, gang. Be well. Thank you. Good night.